Richard, since 2007, this has been cast iron Conservative. How are you going to change that?
Well, I think it's just by getting out on the doorstep and speaking to people and listening to their concerns. I think from my responses that I've had on the doorstep, a lot of people are concerned about the national cuts, and also increasingly because of the budget amendments in the council the other week, how that's going to affect them locally. And I think that it's important that people realise that they have the choice. I mean, to say it's a cast iron Conservative board, I don't think it's true. I think people want to have the option to change. I think we're just out there and plugging away on that.
But is Homesteads not one of these typical wards in which people like Pauline Tolson, maybe low key, but they do that little bit of work on a brownfield planning application or the local forum, and that's it? Are people that bothered about about the cuts?
Well, I think they should be concerned about them. I mean, I don't. I'm sure Pauline does do a reasonable amount of work here and works on these planning applications. But what's also important is the fact that she voted with the Conservatives on this amendment. So, because of her vote, at least in part, we're losing Grace Beach, the adult education, the Thames side, community hall funding is being cut. I mean, that's something that concerns people in the Homesteads as well. So, the local component is very, very important. And were I to be elected, it's something that I will put a lot of focus on. But the council component is very important as well.
You mentioned the Grays Beach Park and Thameside, etc. Are the Labour Party guilty, or Labour group guilty of scaremongering?
We've been here before on scaremongering. I remember in the general election, David Cameron stood up on a pedestal in the leadership debate and said, accused the Labour Party of scaremongering on winter fuel allowance. Now, when you look at the budget, the winter fuel allowance has been cut. I mean, scaremongering is something that they say when they're uncomfortable talking about the issues. I mean, Gary Haig stood up in the council chamber and said in his speech, Grays Beach, Thameside Theatre and the Adult Education Centre, and I think people were interested in the issues.
One question that could be posed to a number of the Labour candidates this time who are of a certain age, young people, what gives you the right or the mandate as young people, without very little life experience, so to speak, to stand as councillors?
I don't think it's a question of having a mandate. I mean, it's a question of working there, getting out, working hard and working on the issues. I mean, for example, Aaron Kiley, who you interviewed a couple of weeks ago, is now, people are getting his leaflets and they're ringing us up and saying, can you help me with this problem? Can you help me with this problem? They're not going to their Conservative councillors in Ockenden, they're going to the people that are speaking to them, and I think there's that level of activity which helps. The other factor to it is that one of the most damaging things that this government has done has been the funding for young people. So you look at things like educational maintenance allowance, the abolition of which the councillor James Holden championed, and things like that, tuition fees, future jobs fund, all these things that are having a massive impact on young people. I think they have to have a voice as well.
What's your view on academies?
What's my view on academies? I don't really have a particularly strong view on academies. I think it's important that everybody gets a good quality of education, whether it's through academies, whether it's through secondary schools. It's something that we've improved on in Thurrock recently, and something we've got to continue to push through. So we've got to work with, those schools who do opt to go for academy status. But
because it does seem a real cultural clash in the Labour group between those old school who are very much, woven into the Butler Act, and those who see more Blairite, I guess, who see the value of academies. Would you agree with that? I
don't think there's a cultural clash. I think everybody in there wants to get the best results for secondary schools in Thurrock. It's a top priority education for the Labour administration, and we've got to work with all the schools.